He didn't remember coming here, but the town remembered him. Every building, every street, every shadowed face seemed to whisper his name. They all knew Jonah, and they were waiting. The silence in the town square was not empty. It was heavy, expectant, a held breath before a scream. Cobblestones, slick with a perpetual dampness that was neither rain nor dew, seemed to grip the soles of his shoes, urging him to stay. Above, a sky the color of old pewter pressed down, suffocating the light. The air was thick with the smell of wet soil and something else, something cloyingly sweet, like flowers left to rot on a grave. He stood, a man untethered from his own history, a ghost who had forgotten how he died, and looked out at the silent, dreaming town that claimed him as its own. He began to walk, a primal urge to find an edge, a boundary, a sign that this place had an end. But the town seemed to unfold before him, a labyrinth of uncanny familiarity. A wrought iron sign, its paint flaking like sunburned skin, swung from a rusted bracket. "Welcome back, Jonah." The words seemed to mock him, a private joke he was not privy to. He had never been here. He would remember a name like this drowsing hollow. It was a name that felt like a warning. He quickened his pace, the sound of his own footsteps unnervingly loud in the oppressive quiet. As he passed a darkened diner, a flicker of neon light sputtered to life, casting a sickly green glow onto the pavement. The sign read, "The Morning Plate." The door swung inward with a soft, inviting creak. A woman stood behind the counter, polishing a glass that was already gleaming. She looked up as he entered, and a smile stretched across her face, a smile that didn't quite reach her vacant, knowing eyes. "Jonah," she said, her voice a low, raspy hum. "Running late today." We were starting to worry. He stood frozen in the doorway, the bell above him silent. How did she know his name? He wanted to ask, but the words felt like stones in his throat. He forced himself to the counter, the worn vinyl of the stool cold against his skin. I think you have me mistaken for someone else," he managed, his voice a stranger's. She chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "Oh, Jonah, you always say that." She placed the glass down and leaned forward, her arms crossed on the countertop. "You always order the same thing. Black coffee, 2 eggs, over easy. And you never, ever finish it." A plate was already there, steam rising from 2 perfectly cooked eggs, their yolks like pale, unblinking eyes. He stared at it, a wave of nausea rolling through him. He reached for his phone, a desperate modern reflex. The screen was a black mirror. No signal, no GPS, no connection to the world he thought he knew. "I need to leave," he said, his voice firming with a rising panic. "Can you tell me how to get to the main road? The highway?" The waitress just continued to smile, that placid, terrifying smile. "All roads lead somewhere, Jonah," she whispered. "And you're already here." He fled the diner, the woman's soft laughter following him into the fog. The town seemed to watch his frantic escape, the windows of the houses like lidded eyes. He ran without direction, turning down street after street, each one lined with identical stoic-faced houses. He stopped, gasping for breath, before a small, clapboard house with a peeling white picket fence. A familiar sickness coiled in his gut. On the mailbox, in faded, hand-painted letters, was his name, J. Miller. His name, Jonah Miller. A key was in the lock. He didn't remember putting it there, but his hand turned it as if it had performed the action 1,000 times. The door opened into a living room suspended in time. Dust motes danced in the slivers of gray light slanting through the blinds. The walls were a gallery of a life he had never lived. Photographs in tarnished silver frames chronicled a man who wore his face. There he was, younger, standing with a smiling woman whose face was unsettlingly blank in the picture. Another photo showed him older, his hair flecked with gray, standing on the porch of this very house. Then he saw them, a series of photos showing him aging through the decades. His face grew lined, his posture stooped, his eyes hollowed out by the years. It was impossible. He was 32. Yet here was proof of a lifetime spent within these walls, a slow decay documented in silver nitrate. His gaze fell upon the last photo in the sequence. It showed him, ancient and frail, holding a small child in his arms. The child was a girl, with dark, serious eyes that seemed to stare directly out of the frame and into him. He didn't recognize her, yet a phantom sense of love and loss ached in his chest, a ghost of an emotion for a ghost of a memory. A floorboard creaked upstairs. He looked up, his heart hammering against his ribs. Then, a flicker of movement outside the window. He turned. The child from the photograph was standing in the overgrown yard, motionless, her dark eyes fixed on him. She was exactly as she appeared in the picture, not a day older. She raised a small hand, not in a wave, but as if to hold him in place. He stumbled back, knocking over a small table. He turned to ask a neighbor, anyone, what was happening. As he looked to the house next door, he saw an old man staring from the window. The man looked familiar. With a jolt of horror, he recognized the face from the final photograph. It was him. The old man smiled, a mirror of the waitress's empty grin, and slowly, deliberately, drew the curtain closed. A whisper slithered through the silence of the house. It was faint at first, a sibilance in the walls, the sound of sand trickling behind the plaster. It grew louder, coalescing into words, his own voice, echoing thoughts he'd never had. Asterisk, you belong here. You have always been here. Asterisk, he clapped his hands over his ears, but the voice was inside him now, a parasite in his own consciousness. It whispered from the gurgling drains, from the sigh of the wind in the eaves, from the frantic beating of his own heart. He ran, desperate to escape the sound of himself, scrambling up a narrow set of stairs into a cramped, suffocating attic. The air was thick with the scent of dried paper and decay. In the center of the room, on a small, dusty table, lay a leather-bound journal. His hands, acting on their own volition, reached for it. He opened it. The handwriting was his. The elegant, slightly slanted script he had perfected in college. The entries chronicled his arrival in Drowsing Hollow, the initial confusion, the slow, creeping acceptance. The early pages were filled with frantic questions, the same ones screaming in his own mind now. But the tone shifted, page by page, from terror to resignation, then to a strange, placid contentment. He read about the waitress, the neighbors, the child. He had named her Lily, his daughter. The final entry was dated yesterday. The ink was still fresh, the handwriting shaky, devolved into a desperate scrawl. It read, "It is starting again, the forgetting. The town is hungry, and it needs a new dream. It needs a new Jonah. I can feel the old me, the real me, fading. He is waking up in the square. I hope he is stronger than I was. I hope he can escape. But no one ever escapes. The town remembers, even when we don't." As he read the final word, a low groan shuddered through the house. He looked out the grimy attic window and saw the impossible. The buildings were shifting. The street below was rearranging itself, houses sliding like pieces on a game board, roads twisting into new and unfamiliar configurations. The laws of geometry and physics had been repealed. The town was a living, breathing thing, and it was closing in on him. He threw the journal down and ran. Out of the attic, out of the house, into the mutating streets. He sprinted, his lungs burning, but every alley he took, every corner he turned, led him back to the same place. The foggy town square where he had awoken. It was a trap, a stomach, and he was being digested. He stood in the center of the square, panting, defeated. The fog swirled, and from it, figures emerged. The waitress. The old man who was also him. The child. Dozens of others, their faces placid, their movements synchronized. They formed a silent circle around him, the townspeople of Drowsing Hollow. They were the town. He screamed at them, a raw, desperate sound. "What do you want from me? Who are you?" They stood in absolute silence, their heads tilted as if listening to a distant melody. Then a faint phosphorescent light began to bloom behind their eyes, a cold, otherworldly glow. They spoke, their voices merging into one, a chorus that was both a whisper and a roar, a sound that vibrated not in the air, but in the bones of his skull. "We are the memory," they chimed. "We are the place that is not a place. You are the dream that we dream. You give us a name. You give us a face. And when the dream is over, we keep a piece of you." As they spoke, he felt it begin, the unraveling. His name, Jonah Miller, felt foreign on his tongue, a random collection of sounds. He looked at his hands, and for a terrifying second, they didn't seem to be his own. His past, his life before the fog, dissolved like sugar in water. Memories of his mother, his first car, his apartment in a city whose name he could no longer recall, they all bled away into nothing. As his identity dissolved, the town grew more vibrant. The fog thinned, and the colors of the buildings sharpened, the gray stone warming into something almost cheerful. The eerie silence was replaced by a soft, ambient hum, the sound of a place content and well-fed. The light in the townspeople's eyes brightened, and he felt himself becoming translucent, his form flickering like a faulty projection. He was a story that had reached its final page, an echo fading into silence. The last thing he saw was the face of the child Lily, her dark eyes filled not with malice, but with a profound, ancient sadness. Then he was gone. A man wakes up in a foggy town square. He has no memory of arriving. There is no one around, just silence. He looks down at his hands, confused. A new sign, freshly painted, hangs near the silent diner. It reads, "Welcome back, Jonah." He looks at it, a flicker of something, not quite a memory, passing through his mind. The diner door swings open. The waitress steps out, wiping her hands on her apron. She smiles, a warm, inviting smile that doesn't reach her ancient, hungry eyes. "Jonah," she says, her voice a soft, welcoming hum. "You're just in time for breakfast." If this story made you question your memories, your identity, and the towns that live inside your dreams, subscribe to Truths Untold, where reality bends, names vanish, and the places you visit might be visiting you. Like, share, and comment, because some towns aren't on any map. They're waiting in your sleep.